All right, let's try this again. So a few nights ago, from when I'm filming this, not from when this is going to air, Metz was over here and we did a 3-hour live stream, and then we attempted to shoot 2 reviews. The review I'm going to talk about today, which is Andy Milligan's 1973 movie Blood, and the other was the Argentinian film Terrified. We had been drinking quite a bit, and the reviews, when I watched them back, were pretty awful. And that's saying something for this channel. But we were talking over each other. We kept contradicting each other and repeating things. So I said, I'm gonna do Blood by myself, and then I'm gonna wait for Metz to come back around, and we'll reshoot that one. So, do you know anything about Andy Milligan? A lot of people call him the Ed Wood of 42nd Street. I've always been, since learning about the guy, I've been kind of fascinated by him. Such a weird character. He got his start he was an actor, but he also got into dressmaking and set building. And when he got into directing, finally, he was able to save money for producers by doing a lot of these jobs himself. His first movie was Vapors, which was a gay themed movie, a homosexual movie, set in a New York bathhouse about all of these men's relationships. And it wasn't like pornography in the way, because Milligan was an angry, hateful man, and he seemed to be angry towards sexuality most of all. So it's very rarely presented as a good thing in any of his movies. When he eventually moved into doing horror exploitation movies for the 42nd Street market, he had done stuff like Guru the Mad Monk. He did Blood. The werewolves are the rats are the rats are coming. The werewolves are here. The Ghastly Ones, which was a video nasty. Bloodthirsty Butchers I've seen. Is a lot of them. But the movie I want to talk about today was Blood, because Blood is the first of his movies that I saw and knew that it was him. I had seen Guru the Mad Monk and Bloodthirsty Butchers on different horror host shows in the past, not really knowing who he was or anything like that. I went to Philly in 2013 for the Lost Film Festival with my friend Steve Carino, and it was Skate Town USA with Marsha Brady and Patrick Swayze and Horshack and people like that. And then Son of Dracula, which I have the poster for right here, which was Harry Nielsen as Count Down, the son of Dracula, and Ringo Starr from the Beatles or the Traveling Wilburys, as Merlin the Magician. It's pretty awful, but it's also kind of amazing. And when we got to Blood, it was the second to last feature, and let me tell you something, I really enjoyed this one. It's not good in any way, shape, or form, but it's such a bizarre oddity. So the movie was made in Staten Island, New York, where Milligan owned a mansion that he was apparently gifted, and then later in his life he was gifted a hotel when he got back from London that he used for to film stuff as well. This movie revolves around the son of the Wolfman, the daughter of Dracula in a dysfunctional relationship, along with their servants. The werewolf's son is trying to cure Dracula's daughter of her vampirism by using the serum created from man-eating plants. And then he has an assistant who has a diseased leg. And then there's a whole subplot about a lawyer stealing their inheritance. It's clear it's supposed to be the 19th century, but you could see 1970s architecture around the locations where they're filming. They're wearing period costumes, which brings a different level of bizarre to the movies, because they're in one way, it's period dress, but also it's like shoddily made. Milligan shot on a 16 millimeter camera for pretty much all of his movies, and you can hear the camera the entire time, like rolling the entire time. A lot of times in his movies he edits in camera, so you could actually hear him cut, or he would do a thing where he would spin the camera around to work as a transition, and then people also brought up the fact that he would often fade out or pan away from a sex scene or from a scene of violence. And people would say, well, was something cut out there by the distributor? Because there is other scenes of violence or nudity in his movies. Like Flesh Pots of 42nd Street has world famous porn star in it, Harry Reams, and there's a hardcore sex scene in that movie. That was like later in his career. So he's just a weird, hateful, strange person. I've read about it, a lot about him, and listened to people like John Waters talk about him. And the thing about his movies, like they say, the Ed Wood of 42nd Street, when you look at certain directors' films, good or bad, you know it's them. Like Ed Wood, if you look at an Ed Wood movie, it doesn't look like anybody else's movie. When you look at a John Waters movie, a Martin Scorsese movie, and an Andy Milligan movie, they don't look like anyone else could have ever made those movies. And there's something interesting and cool about that, because it's like, okay, you're not particularly a technically savvy director, but you found a way to put your own stamp on things, and that's commendable. And there's a reason that Severin Films put out the Dungeon of Andy Milligan, which was all of his films in a big box set and a bunch of supplemental materials. Like I said, the Ghastly Ones was a video nasty, so that was pulled in England. If you look up Lampy Man 101, it's my friend Glenn Criddle. He has a great YouTube page where he reviews all the British video nasties and then a bunch of other extreme films and stuff. So I'm going to link him below. And, so he talks a bit about Andy Milligan and that. I had him do a review of Blood back when I used to run the Anthony Wayne Theater. I basically hounded him until he did a review of this one. Again, you're going from when the Wolfman does turn into the Wolfman, it is one of the worst shot scenes in movie history. You can't tell what the fuck is going on. Dracula's daughter has these bad Halloween fangs in. The plants are ridiculous. Have you ever seen Waiting for Guffman, the Christopher Guest movie? Like, that level of community theater acting is on display here. But it's interesting and fascinating in the same way. There's also, because of the camera and the sounds, the entire movie basically sounds like someone sitting next to the camera making balloon animals. There's this weird squeaking sound the entire time. But I really like this movie for all of its... I mean, I like it especially because of all its flaws. It is just a fun, weird film. And you could tell it was Milligan trying to make something more mainstream by including the Wolfman and Dracula and all that. And it ends with the new family who moves in are the Frankensteins. So it ends on that. There's just some great lines where because the werewolf son is cheating on the wife, and she's like, "Do you love me?" And he's like, "Quiet now. It's time to go to sleep." And, she's like, "Make love to me." He's like, "Oh, don't be crazy." Like, he has no interest in her whatsoever. There's just so many good lines of just weird Andy Milligan dialogue, because he was a dude who apparently had a very overbearing mother, and that bleeds into almost all of his films. There is this kind of anger and hatred towards women that are in his movies, but also everyone is a bitch. He writes everyone to be very queen bitch in all of his movies. There's some fires. Oh, this movie also has one major downfall, is it has a mouse decapitation that they show. It's kind of fucked up and weird. And then the actress playing the daughter of Dracula has to put it close to her mouth before they fade out. But yeah, there's a mouse gets his little head cut off. It's got bad acting, the squeaking sounds. It's just it's wild and crazy and weird and stupid and the night that I watched it, I was coming, like I said, at that film festival. I was coming back from Arizona. My life was not going very well because going so great now. I needed something to kind of take my mind off it. And I laughed hysterically at this movie. And you could just tell, an Ed Wood movie where Andy Milligan was making something that he thought, Wood thought that Plan 9 was The Day the Earth Stood Still. But he was so obtuse that he couldn't recognize what he was making was not that. Because he had all of these sycophants around him, his weird outcast that made him who he was. And it was the same thing with Milligan, because he chased a lot of people off by being just a miserable cunt to people. Actors and actresses were constantly quitting. He got married to a woman, despite the fact that he was like super gay, and she went to Puerto Rico for their honeymoon, and he stayed and trolled the gay bars of 1960s New York. But yeah, his movies stand out because there is this underlying level of hatred in his movies, and it's interesting because it follows the path of the roughies. You had like the nudie cutie movies, not nudie cutie, nudie cuties, which were like the nudist colony movies, the immoral Mr. Teagues type of movie. Stuff that like Russ Meyer and Herschel Gordon Lewis made early in their careers. Even Doris Wishman like did Nude on the Moon. Like if I could ever get the rights to it, I would love to make a biopic of Doris Wishman, because she was essentially the female Ed Wood, and in the 1950s and 60s, she was the only woman writing, directing, and producing pornography, which is super interesting. I've always thought that would be one to do, and then she made in the 80s. Was it A Night to Dismember, I think, and it like came out with a bunch of different titles. But yeah, look her up. Again, just like I discovered her the same way that I discovered Russ Meyer, the same way I discovered Fred Olen Ray from the Incredibly Strange Picture Show, which was a British series, but we used to get it because we had a satellite dish when I was a little kid. But what was I talking? Oh, the Nudie Cuties. So they had those, and then that transitioned into like the bondage S&M movies, which they called the Roughies. Joe Dante talks a lot about them in the American Grindhouse documentary, and that then progressed into pornography, and you'd have like the SS movies. You had a lot of Nazi exploitation movies that allowed for that type of brutality. But Milligan was just making these strange, surreal fever dreams of unbridled queen anger, and there's something about it which is very interesting to me. It's one of those directors that I keep falling down the rabbit hole, because then it'll introduce me to another director, and I'll find something. I'm like, well, I've heard that title before, but I've never seen this before. And that's kind of what, I've been doing since I was a kid, even before the internet, like Psychotronic magazine or Fangoria magazine or something, and learning about a lot of these guys and trying to find a lot of these movies. A lot of Milligan's stuff was just lost. It wasn't until more recently that the Weirdo and Monstrosity were discovered. Garage House Pictures in Philadelphia actually put out the Monstrosity, I believe, through their label. But a lot of his movies were just lost to time, and he wound up kind of plagiarizing himself a bunch of times, because he would make something and then he would basically remake it again for a different distributor. He died in 1991 of AIDS, buried in an unmarked grave, and it felt like he was kind of like discovered and praised more after he had passed away, just like Ed Wood. When the Golden Turkeys awards came out, and people all of a sudden had this interest in Ed Wood. Milligan, I feel through the Severin releases, people are starting to reevaluate his films a little bit more and look at the subtext and just the text of some of them. Some of them, the mother characters are just fucking crazy. But who would have thought to do a movie where we're going to have the daughter of Dracula, the son of the Wolfman, man-eating plants, science googly muck about a serum to cure the woman's leg and cure the daughter's vampirism and the squeaky sounds like I'm sitting on a pleather couch wearing leather pants, while making balloon animals. And then you have all this stuff with Mr. Root, who's the lawyer who's stealing from them. There's just all these things going on at once, and none of it makes any sense when you really hold it together. And then you add to that the melodramatic acting and the just the bizarre camera angles and everything. I don't know. I really, really like this movie, and it's just an excuse to talk about Andy Milligan. That's this week. I shot this one trying not to repeat myself and not to talk over myself. And I haven't been drinking today because I'm not live streaming. So that's this Wednesday's review. Blood is free on YouTube. You can check it out. Also, look up Doris Wishman. Look up Andy Milligan. Look at some more things about him. It's a very, very interesting character, and I love these weird outsider artists that left their mark on schlock cinema. There's not a lot of fields where outsiders like this are remembered this way. It's this weird, time capsule that has, that people look at and go, "Oh, this is bad," but there is also something special about it. You could say that about a Herschel Gordon Lewis, Coleman Francis, Ed Wood. There's these filmmakers who make these things where you're like, this isn't very good, but it's also kind of mesmerizing. That's what I feel about this one. So let me know in the comments below if there are any filmmakers out there that you feel from the cult grindhouse exploitation world that you feel deserves more attention. What's your favorite Dracula or Wolfman movies? I like ones where you can actually see what's going on, unlike Blood. And he had a lot of titles with movies with the title Blood in it, obviously that would be something that would look cool on a marquee, but it is kind of he's got so many blood of this and that, and it's just like, okay, they get kind of confusing. This one played as a double feature with Legacy of Satan. I used to have the double feature poster. I have no idea what happened to it. And then I think when it came back to New York later in the 70s, it played as a double feature with the Chinese Hercules, I think it was, because a friend of mine who's a collector of old newspaper ads showed me that. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But I had never heard of this movie before 2013. I'd only seen some of Milligan's movies, not knowing who he was or what his backstory was. And then once I started to read about him and look into it, I was like, this is fucking weird, but also pretty fucking cool and special. And that's why I love exploitation movies and B movies. It was just like you took these people who in a studio system would never, they would never even get a chance to have their voice heard, but you had this underground world of grindhouse where, you could get these strange esoteric voices out into the world, and you never know when you put something out there who is going to latch onto it. Like I've said a million times on a million different shows, you think of the worst movie you can think of, that's probably somebody's favorite movie, and not that I would ever put any of Milligan's movies up there, but this is a good sit. It's a fun trash movie if you want to, chemically imbalance your brain a little bit with a little of this or a little of that, and Mystery Science Theater it with some friends. Like I said, avoid the terrible warbling sounds and the clearly 1970s railings for the sidewalks and stuff where they're in, and then the completely over the top Christopher Guest style acting of these people who are just like they're chewing the scenery like you wouldn't believe. When you do see the Wolfman makeup and you can actually see it, it doesn't look bad. Same thing with when they show Dracula's daughter when she is kind of like decrepit when she needs a shot. It's not bad looking. That's it. I will see you all next Wednesday.